I never thought the truth would come to my front door. I always imagined if everything ever fell apart, it would be loud, screaming, accusations. Maybe Reed finding messages on my phone or catching me somewhere I shouldn't have been. I never imagined another woman would be the one to expose me, standing in my kitchen, holding proof I couldn't talk my way out of. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where I should have stopped myself. For 13 years, I was married to a man who believed in safety. Reed didn't chase excitement. He chased stability. A steady job, a quiet house, a predictable routine. He built his life like you build a shelter, brick by brick, making sure nothing could blow it over. And for a long time, I told myself that should have been enough. From the outside, we looked solid. A 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. A dog who waited by the door every night. Weekend routines. Shared bills. Shared history. People told me all the time how lucky I was. "You hit the jackpot with Reed," they'd say. I smiled. I nodded. I agreed. But somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling chosen. Reed worked hard. Long hours. Early mornings. He came home exhausted, proud of himself for providing. And I told myself I was proud of him too. But what I really felt was invisible. Our conversations became practical. Groceries. Bills. Schedules. The warmth faded slowly enough that I could pretend it hadn't. I didn't wake up one day and decide to cheat. That's the lie people expect. It started with space. With quiet. With feeling like I existed alongside my own life instead of inside it. When work introduced a new project team, I welcomed the distraction more than I admitted. Long meetings. Late nights. A reason to feel needed somewhere again. That's where Ethan came in. Ethan listened. That's the dangerous part people don't warn you about. He noticed when I looked tired. He asked questions that weren't about logistics. He made jokes that landed. Compliments that felt casual but lingered. And when I mentioned Reed, he nodded in that understanding way, like he already knew what it felt like to be married and lonely. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself everyone needs friends at work. The first line I crossed wasn't physical. It was emotional. Staying a few minutes longer after meetings. Texting just a little too late. Smiling at my phone and tilting it away without realizing I'd done it. When Reed asked how work was, I kept it vague. Deadlines. Stress. The usual. I didn't want to lie, but I didn't want to tell the truth either. That should have scared me. Instead, I adjusted. Girls' nights became my cover without me consciously choosing them as one. At first, they were real. Then they became convenient. Every time I said the words, I felt less guilty saying them again. Reed didn't question me. That trust made it easier to betray him. The night everything truly crossed the line wasn't dramatic either. A hotel. A neutral place. A space where I didn't have to be anyone's wife. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed afterward, staring at the carpet, telling myself this didn't define me. That it was a mistake. That it wouldn't happen again. It happened again. And again. Every time, I told myself it would be the last. The night I came home claiming food poisoning, I knew I'd gone too far. My stomach wasn't sick. My conscience was. I walked into my own house with the smell of hotel soap still clinging to my skin, my heels in my hand, my heart pounding. Reed was sitting there, waiting. Calm. Concerned. Trusting. That trust almost broke me. I dropped onto the couch and performed pain like it was a role I'd rehearsed. Bad tacos. Nausea. Exhaustion. Reed asked if I was okay. I nodded. I couldn't look him in the eye. I told myself I was protecting him. What I was really doing was protecting myself. The next morning, guilt sat heavy in my chest. My eyes were swollen, not from sickness, but from crying alone in the car before coming inside. I moved through the kitchen like a stranger in my own home. When my phone buzzed, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Reed noticed. Of course he did. He asked if I was sure it was just food poisoning. I said yes. The lie came out smoother than I expected. That scared me more than anything. When I told him I was going to the clinic, I convinced myself it was responsible. I ignored the deeper fear gnawing at me. that some truths don't stay buried just because you're not ready to face them. At work, I tried to focus. I failed. I didn't know Reed had received the test results. I didn't know my secret was already collapsing quietly while I deleted messages in bed that night, turning my phone away from mirrors like reflections could judge me. I still believed I could manage this. I still believed I was in control. I had no idea my lies were already walking toward my front door. The test results came back faster than I expected. I was at work, pretending to focus on a spreadsheet that hadn't changed in 20 minutes, when my phone buzzed. A notification from the clinic portal. For a second, I just stared at it, my finger hovering over the screen. I told myself it was nothing, that everything would be fine, that I'd overreacted. That's the thing about denial. It doesn't scream. It whispers just loud enough for you to grab onto it. I opened the results alone in a bathroom stall, my back pressed against the cold metal door. My eyes skimmed the page too quickly, skipping medical language I didn't understand until they landed on the one word I couldn't escape. Positive. I read it again. And again. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might pass out right there. This wasn't something you got from stress or bad food. This wasn't random. This was proof, clinical, documented proof, of something I'd tried to convince myself was compartmentalized, controlled, harmless. My hands shook as I locked my phone. The first thought that hit me wasn't guilt. It was fear. Reed. I thought about his face, the way he looked at me when I came home late, the way he trusted my words even when they didn't add up. I thought about the house, the dog, the life I was standing on top of while digging underneath it. I didn't tell him. I told myself I needed time. Time to process. Time to figure out how to explain this in a way that wouldn't destroy everything. I didn't understand yet that there are some things you can't explain your way out of. That night, I went to bed early, claiming exhaustion. Reed lingered in the hallway longer than usual. I could feel him there, even without looking. When I thought he'd gone back to the living room, I pulled my phone out. Panic makes you stupid. I started deleting messages. Fast, methodical, ruthless. Whole threads gone. Photos erased. Archived conversations cleared like they'd never existed. Every vibration made my heart slam against my ribs. I tilted the phone away from the mirror without even realizing I was doing it. That should have been my wake-up call. Instead, I doubled down. The next evening, I came home to Reed leaning against the counter, arms crossed loosely, like he was waiting for something. He asked how the clinic went. I smiled. Too quickly. They think it was just something I ate, I said. Nothing serious. The lie felt thin even as it left my mouth. I didn't notice how still he became. I didn't notice the way his eyes held mine a second longer than usual, like he was memorizing something. Then the doorbell rang. The sound cut through the room so sharply that I froze mid-step. My stomach dropped in a way that had nothing to do with nausea. Reed didn't move right away. He just looked at me, then toward the door. "I'll get it," he said calmly. I knew. I didn't know how, but I knew. When Reed opened the door, I heard a woman's voice. Low. Controlled. Not angry, worse. Steady. She walked into my kitchen like she belonged there. She was about my age. Tired eyes. Straight posture. In her hand was a folded piece of paper. The moment our eyes met, something in her expression told me this wasn't a misunderstanding I could laugh off. "I'm Rachel," she said. The name hit me like a physical blow. Ethan's wife. My knees went weak. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. Reed stood slightly in front of me. Not protectively, not aggressively. Just enough to block my exit. Rachel unfolded the paper. The sound of it opening felt deafening. She didn't yell. She didn't insult me. She read. My name. Clinical language. Test results. That word again. Positive. I whispered for her to stop. I begged. I don't even remember what words came out of my mouth. My hands reached out like I could grab the paper and erase the truth off it. Reed didn't say a word. My phone buzzed on the counter. The sound was unmistakable. Rachel, Reed, and I all looked down at it at the same time. The screen lit up, bright and merciless. Ethan. I lunged for it. Reed moved faster. He didn't smash it. He didn't throw it. He just pinned it gently to the counter with his boot, like he was stopping something dangerous from moving. In that moment, every lie collapsed at once. I started crying, real crying this time. Ugly, desperate, gasping sobs. The words poured out faster than I could control them. It was a mistake. It was just once. I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing. Rachel laughed. Not kindly. Not cruelly. Just tired. She showed us the hotel receipts. Multiple nights. Same room. Same pattern. Rideshare timestamps that lined up too perfectly to deny. Each piece of evidence stripped another layer of my excuses away. I tried a different angle. Our marriage wasn't good. I felt lonely. I didn't think it would go this far. Reed finally spoke. Stop. One word.
Calm.
Final. It hit harder than anything Rachel had said. He looked at me, not with anger, not with hate, but with something worse. Disappointment, so complete it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. You didn't accidentally end up in a hotel, he said quietly. You made choices. Over and over. I felt myself shrinking under his voice. Rachel added the final blow. You told him we were basically done, she said. You told my husband I didn't care. I had no defense left. When Rachel left, the house felt hollow, like something essential had been removed. I begged.
Therapy.
Counseling.
Quitting my job.
Blocking Ethan. Changing my number. Promises spilled out of me like blood from a wound. Reed didn't interrupt. When I ran out of words, he placed a blank folder on the table. I understood immediately. You're staying at Linda's tonight, he said. Tomorrow we talk about separation. The word separation hit me harder than the test results. This is my home, I whispered. I'm your wife. He picked up his keys. I'm going somewhere I can breathe. And then he walked out. I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, the test results, the empty chair across from me. For the first time since the affair started, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't losing Reed because I cheated. I was losing him because I lied. The house was silent after Reed left. Not the calm kind of silence. The kind that presses against your ears until your thoughts get louder than anything outside. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the place where Reed had been standing, where Rachel had laid the test results down like a verdict.
My phone buzzed again.
Ethan. I didn't answer. For the first time since this whole thing started, I didn't feel comfort when I saw his name. I felt exposed, like he was a reminder of everything I'd just lost. I turned the phone face down and let it keep buzzing until it stopped. I packed a bag on autopilot.
Clothes.
Toiletries. Things that suddenly felt meaningless. Every item I touched reminded me that I might not be coming back to this house the same way again. When I left for Linda's, the dog followed me to the door, confused, tail wagging like this was just another routine shift. I almost broke right there. At Linda's, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Reed's face. Not angry, not yelling, just calm. Finished. That hurt more than any scream ever could. The next morning, my phone exploded. My sister.
My mom.
Reed's brother. Friends who hadn't checked in for months suddenly had opinions. Somehow, the story had already spread, softened, twisted, filtered through my version because that was the only one anyone had heard yet. People told me marriages survive worse. That Reed was being cold. That I deserved a chance to explain myself properly. That 13 years doesn't disappear over one mistake. I clung to those words like a life raft. When Reed finally agreed to talk, I walked into it thinking if I said the right things, showed the right amount of remorse, I could still save us. I was wrong. He was calm. Again.
Always calm now.
He told me we'd be separating. That he'd spoken to a lawyer. That he needed space and clarity. I cried. I argued. I reminded him of memories, vacations, holidays, inside jokes. I told him love means fighting. He listened. Then he said something that broke what little hope I had left. I fought by trusting you, he said. By ignoring my instincts. By believing you every time you lied. There was no room left for me to argue. When the paperwork started, reality finally set in. This wasn't a scare. This wasn't a wake-up call designed to scare me straight and then return to normal. This was the end of the life I thought I could keep while secretly building another one on the side. Ethan called again. This time, I answered. He sounded frantic, defensive. He wanted reassurance. He wanted to explain. He wanted me to tell him we hadn't ruined everything for nothing. I listened for a minute, and then I realized something sickening. Even now, after the exposure, after the fallout, he was still thinking about himself. I told him Reed knew everything, that his wife knew everything, that this was over. He tried to soften it. Blame circumstances. Blame loneliness. Blame alcohol. Blame marriages. I hung up. Blocking him felt hollow. It wasn't empowering. It was just late. The days that followed were some of the loneliest of my life. Reed moved through the separation with a quiet efficiency that made it impossible to paint him as the villain. He didn't trash me to people. He didn't blast messages online. He didn't demand revenge. That somehow made my guilt heavier. When we divided things, it wasn't dramatic. Just boxes, lists, signatures. Watching our life turn into bullet points on legal paper. At one point, I saw our wedding photo sitting in a box. Reed didn't throw it away. He didn't smash the frame. He just packed it like it was part of a chapter he was done rereading. That image haunted me.
I tried one last time.
I went back to the house when he was there. I asked for 5 minutes. Just 5. I said all the things I'd already said before, hoping repetition might change the outcome. That we loved each other. That people recover from affairs. That I'd learned my lesson. He looked at me the way you look at someone you once knew very well but no longer recognize. We can't fix what you kept breaking, he said. Then he said goodbye. Not cruelly. Not dramatically. Just final. When the door closed, something inside me collapsed completely. The days after that blurred together. I stayed with friends, then moved into a small apartment that felt more like a holding cell than a home. Silence followed me everywhere. There was no one waiting for me. No one asking where I'd been. No one trusting me enough to believe my words. And that's when it really hit. The affair hadn't given me excitement. It had taken my stability. I replayed my decisions endlessly. Not just the cheating, but the lies. The ease with which I'd said them. The confidence I'd had that I could manage everything without consequences. I'd mistaken attention for connection. I'd mistaken secrecy for control. I'd mistaken Reed's trust for weakness. Rachel texted once. She didn't insult me. She didn't threaten me. She just said she was staying with her mom with the kids for now, and that lawyers were involved. She didn't need closure from me. She'd already built hers on the truth. I didn't reply. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't be about easing my own guilt. As the weeks passed, the narrative around me shifted. Some people stopped calling. Some quietly took Reed's side without saying it out loud. Others stayed neutral but distant, like they didn't trust me anymore either. I started understanding something uncomfortable. That consequences don't always come as punishment. Sometimes they come as clarity. Reed didn't destroy my life. I did. He just refused to keep living inside my lies. I thought cheating was the worst thing I'd done. It wasn't. The worst thing was coming home night after night, looking someone in the eyes, and choosing deception over honesty because it was easier. Now, my life is quieter. Not peaceful. Just quiet. I go to work. I come home. I sit with my thoughts longer than I want to. I don't get to distract myself with excuses anymore. And that's where the regret really lives. Not in missing Reed romantically, but in knowing I had someone who gave me safety, trust, and consistency, and I threw it away because it didn't feel exciting enough. If I could speak to the version of myself who thought she could compartmentalize an affair, I'd tell her this. You don't lose your marriage the moment you cheat. You lose it every time you lie to protect the cheating. By the time Reed walked away, the marriage was already gone. All that remained was the paperwork. He didn't leave because he stopped loving me. He left because I stopped respecting him. And once respect dies, love doesn't survive long behind it. This isn't a redemption story. This is a warning. You don't get to decide which parts of your choices matter. You don't get to keep the comfort and outsource the consequences. I thought I could live two lives. In the end, I couldn't even hold on to one.